Deadpool and Wolverine has now formalized the concept of an anchor being to the MCU multiverse. An anchor being is a being of such importance to a singular branch of the sacred timeline that if that being were to die or be removed, the entire branch of the multiverse would start to decay and eventually be erased from the sacred timeline. And today's video is going to discuss that process and who might be the current anchor being of the MCU. But before we start, I want to give you the option to drop your prediction down in the comments section before we go any farther. Who do you think the main anchor being of the sacred timeline is? So drop it down below and then we'll see if we match up later. So, anchor beings die and their universe decays and dies along with them. This process can and usually does take thousands of years to occur after the death of this anchor being. Kind of how like when Mr. Rogers died in 2003, everything just kind of slowly started coming apart at a much more alarming pace than previously. In the case of the Fox X-Men universe, which is designated Earth 10005, it's the Wolverine who acts as the anchor being, proving once again that Wolverine is the X-Men, which is at the top of weekly discussion at my Scott Summers fan club meetings. Wolverine died at the end of Logan, which canonically takes place in the year 2029, so unbeknownst to anybody in the past where Deadpool and Wolverine takes place, their Earth 10005 will begin to decay due to the death that hasn't even occurred yet to them. This leads to a Time Ripper pruning their entire universe far quicker due to the aspirations of Paradox, a rogue TVA agent who no one in that universe had even interacted with, nor have they ever heard anything about the TVA in general. Now you might be thinking to yourself that anchor beings aren't ever going to be brought up again, but let's also consider that Kevin Feige himself, the mastermind of the MCU, has also stated that the lore introduced in Deadpool and Wolverine would be very important to the next phase of the MCU and Avengers films, and during the press and marketing for Deadpool and San Diego Comic-Con this weekend, he did mention that people simply talking about the anchor being now was making him excited because that concept was going to be very important going forward. So the question becomes, if Wolverine was so important to the Fox X-Men universe that the entire universe decays and dies after he does, aka the marketing ran out, boys, then who would be the anchor being of the current MCU, and how would that impact the current MCU timeline, aka the sacred timeline? And I'm going to give you three possibilities. The first one everybody is saying, but in my opinion is the least likely candidate, is Tony Stark's Iron Man. Now, I've seen this theory floating around already, and I want to explain why this is probably not the case. Tony Stark is the original MCU hero, and he's probably received the biggest glow up in terms of popularity of any hero since he made his theatrical big screen debut all the way back in 2008. But he did die in battle, and nothing happened afterward to signify that the anchor being of the sacred timeline had passed, which to me is a pretty big indicator that Tony, while very important, is not the anchor being of the sacred timeline. Now granted, this entire thing is a new concept that maybe Kevin hadn't started cooking until the Fox deal went through, but it doesn't pass the logic test. It, to me, would come across as a lazier piece of writing than, actually Captain Marvel has been around for decades, but she didn't come back to Earth once because she's like really busy doing space stuff. This doesn't mean Tony wasn't very important to the sacred timeline, but probably not the most important character. Alright, now my second choice is Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. Hold on, slow down, hear me out. Wanda has an incredibly powerful level of latent magical abilities that were enhanced while being introduced to not only the Mind Stone, but also after absorbing the magical energies of Agatha Harkness during the WandaVision show. We also know that according to the Darkhold, the Scarlet Witch is a being so powerful that her unchecked abilities could destroy not only one reality, but all realities. We also know that the Scarlet Witch does not exist in every reality. She isn't a being that's born, she's a being that's forged, and the Darkhold claims that it's her destiny to destroy everything. But Nick, isn't she dead already? I mean, yeah, we believe we saw Wanda die in Multiverse of Madness, but that's the fun part and the interesting element of magic. You can use it to do things that defy traditional logic. For example, there are a lot of theories floating around about the upcoming show Agatha Harkness and why it matters, considering, let's face it, it's an entire show that only got made because of a meme. Everything from the idea that it doesn't take place in the main 616 universe to the plot point that this dead woman on the table here is actually Wanda, and the show is about bringing Wanda Maximoff back to life maybe. We really don't know, but it's fun to consider. However, I think from a lore perspective, the most likely candidate would be Kang. Why Kang, you might ask? Well, First of all, the MCU is clearly pivoting away from all things Jonathan Majors and Kang. We don't need a recap of his off-screen issues, but originally Avengers 5 was titled Kang Dynasty, and now it's titled Avengers 5 Get Robert Downey Jr. the Bag, or Doomsday or whatever. But the MCU's post-Endgame foundation was built off the back of Majors, and they placed a lot of stock on his acting chops and charisma as Kang. You know, that's being the linchpin of Phase 4 onward. It's Kang who's kind of the progenitor of all this multiverse hoo-ha anyway. As the creator of the sacred timeline, the variant of Kang known as He Who Remains closely controlled the existence of the multiverse and pruned any existences where the actions of those beings gave rise to a threatening variant of himself. Then Sylvie stabbed him in the chest, killed him, and the entire cinematic universe went off the rails, right? So it stands to assume that Kang could be considered the most important being in any reality where a version of himself exists. Ultimately, any universe with a Kang needs to be so closely monitored that if anything goes astray, it threatens all of them. And we know that following the events of Loki Season 2, there is at least a couple more variants still out there. Now, consider that we haven't even met the Kang of the MCU 616 yet. He might not even be born. The Kang we see in Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania is not from the main 616 universe. He's a multiversal traveler from the far future, one so dangerous that he was placed outside of space and time within the quantum realm. That's kind of the whole point of his existence. In fact, he was cast out of the Council of Kangs and He Who Remains, and left powerless in the quantum realm with no way of leaving in order to keep him out of the sacred timeline. Considering at this point in time we really don't know much about what happens to the rest of the Council, it stands to be determined that we have not yet met the Kang of the main MCU 616. We also have Robert Downey Jr. to factor into this new Avengers Doomsday 5 and Avengers Secret War thing, so it's entirely possible that he's rolled in with them as well. Ultimately, only time will tell if this concept is even heavily used in the future. Like I said before, during the post-Deadpool and Wolverine and San Diego Comic-Con Media Blitz, Kevin was asked directly about who the anchor being for the main Marvel Cinematic Universe was, and he said that it makes him happy that people are discussing it. But it seems like the concept is here to stay. Much like the Highlander, there can only be one being per universe, so we'll see who it ends up being. But let me know down in the comments who you think it is, and make sure to hit the like button because it costs you absolutely nothing but helps us significantly. And maybe if the person that you pick is put together in a well thought out enough argument, I'll steal that argument and make a video on it myself. Thank you guys again for watching this video. I hope it's piqued your curiosity. This has been Nick with Key Issues. Thank you guys again for watching, and remember the motto, anchor beings over everything.